Saram, everybody, offering my love and gratitude at the divine lotus feet of our most beloved Bhagwan. My love and gratitude to all of you for joining us this evening and sharing your inspiration and excitement and good vibes and energy. So I was reflecting on the topic, and then I was also thinking about the Go Green retreat that we had this past weekend, a wonderful initiative that was coordinated by our young adults, and our national YA reps had shared some pictures from the event, and it reminded me of this discourse that Bhagwan had given. I was a Group 1 Balavika student at that time. This was back in 1983. In January, Swami was visiting Chennai, and he gave this discourse to the active workers in the organization. And it was on sealing on desires. It is actually Swami had initiated this program, one of the most simplest, most wonderful and practical spirituality when you think about it. Even before there was talk about climate change and Go Green practices, Swami had talked about Sealing on Desires program, which had 4 components, which is don't waste food, don't waste money, don't waste time, and don't waste energy. And I wanted to share a picture from that day, January 19, 1983, which is just so sweet. Swami had given a nice dose, like we call, everybody got a good dose in the discourse, where Bhagavan was talking about not wasting money on him. So he had said, I don't understand why all of you have to garland me so many times. When Swami enters the hall, he's offered a garland. When he goes on stage, he's offered a garland. When he leaves, he's offered a garland. So Swami gave a nice, good dose to everybody who was present. So the organizers, they got nervous and they were like, we don't want to, upset Swami again. So they kind of changed their strategy, because there was usually, once Swami was done with his discourse, there would be somebody who would go and offer Swami a garland. So this time they were better prepared. What is the reward when you obey God implicitly? That moment was actually captured by a photographer, and I'm going to share my screen now to share that picture. So just to set the context, Swami is finished with his discourse and he's walking down. And I'm sure you all see here. Let me zoom in a little bit. So here, Swami was waiting for the garland to come, and the garland didn't come. Instead, they started the arti. So Bhagavan was making fun of all the organizers, saying, what? I just told you that no garland and you already implemented it. So I don't get a garland now. And everybody was, so joyful about the way Swami had, created a humorous moment. But that is the reward. When we listen to God implicitly and immediately, there is always joy. That is guaranteed. There are no questions about it. So it is my great honor and pleasure to invite Sister Suja, our Region 10 Education Coordinator, to introduce our presenters today who are presenting on Pursuit of Happiness.
Sairam, thank you, Parna. Sairam, everybody, so wonderful to see you all today. So today we have a couple of wonderful teachers from Region 10, and they are from the South Houston area, and I'll introduce them one by one. Sister Disha Saharia, she has been an SSE teacher for about 14 years. Both her children went through the SSE program and graduated from it. She is currently serving as the Vice President in the South Houston Psi Center. She's a community pediatrician in the Houston area. She's also a clinical assistant professor in pediatrics with the Baylor College of Medicine. She loves reading and gardening and hiking. And one fun fact about her is whenever the kids bought a book, she would be the first one to finish it even before they did. So moving along, we have a brother Praful Kumar, and he's also from the South Houston Sai Center. And Swami brought Brother Praful Kumar to the Sai fold when he was in Japan between 1999 and 2001, even though he lived only 10 minutes away from the South Houston Sai Center at that time for over a decade. And Brother Praful and his family have been part of the Sai activities in many ways and in SSE for a long time. He has held different leadership positions. Currently, he runs a company to help anyone that needs mentoring, career guidance, or preparing for a dream job on a pro bono basis. This service, he's opened the service on a global basis to anyone in need. And they both are Group 3 SSE teachers from the South Houston Sai Center. So please welcome Sister Disha Saharia and Brother Praful Kumar. Sai Ram.
Sai Ram, everyone. My humble pranams at the lotus feet of Bhagwan Sri Satya Sai Baba. My name is Praful Kumar, as I just got introduced, and Sister Disha. We are the Group 3 Year 1 teachers from South Houston Sai Center. And I'm very, very happy that Swami allowed me in his fold, and he gave chance to work in different area. But I can tell you, learning really became astronomical once I joined the SSE, because SSE is the real area where Swami's teaching becomes very clear to you when you sit with students and start talking about it. Next slide, please. Going to the overview. So we are teaching Group 3 Year 1, and our curriculum for the year is Sealing on Desire, as Sister Aparna was introducing. And we didn't know all the students and families. So what we did, we started with a one-to-one each family introduction, and we talked to every family and student and introduced the topic, and also introduced ourselves to the family so that they can know, because as you know, this topic, Sealing on Desires, is not just for individual, it's for entire family to practice. And also this topic is very, very dear to Swami, as Sister Aparna just mentioned, that this is a very dear topic to Swami, and he has talked about this numerous times to his students and the different discourses. So our class, we have 13 students, and we went through the topic, and whatever we are going to present to you today is the essence of what we have experienced in the class, with the student, with the family, and practicing it in our real life. Next slide, please. So the topics what we have in Sealing on Desire is food, money, and time, which we have already finished in the class. And today when we talk, you will see that how we went through these topics in the class and what happened and how the discussion went through. Currently, we are talking about energy, and these are the real topic where we can bring our daily life along the way we live. So without taking further time, first of all, I'll thank Sister Aparna and Sister Suja to giving me this opportunity, and I'll pass it on to Sister Disha. Sai Ram.
Sai Ram. My most humble pranams at the lotus feet of our dear Bhagwan Baba. Can we have the next slide? Thank you so much. So This, our classes right now are still on Zoom. And so we started off with the topic of food, and we had this big discussion about what is healthy eating and what is, how not to waste food. But we wanted to really, see how the kids can apply this to their lives. And so this idea was floated of having a picnic where we could meet in person. The purpose of this picnic was that we would get to know the families one-on-one as well as have a lesson plan there. All the families were willing to meet for a picnic. And so my question to all of you is, keeping in mind that this is the topic for our year was Sealing on Desires, how would you go about planning a picnic? You as teachers are have to exhibit everything that we are asking the students to do. And so when you ask when you're planning a picnic, you can put it in the chat box, any suggestions that you have about how you would go about planning this picnic. And what I will do is we will touch upon some of the things that we had thought about as we were planning the picnic. One of the things that we really want to do, even though resources is the last part of our curriculum, when we are planning a picnic, we have to be very green, because Baba has always said, respect nature, respect the resources. And so we had told the children to bring their bottles. We had asked very good, I can see all in the suggestions that everybody has thought of the same thing. We did not use any plastic cutlery. We bought reusable spoons and forks. We had brought all the items in reusable containers. So everybody brought their foods in reusable containers. We did bring the cloth napkins. And we tried to go as low on plastic and anything disposable as we could. We also suggested not to bring huge quantities of food so that nothing would be wasted. And so this is wonderful. I think that everybody has the suggestions that we had thought about. Yes, perfect. And so I think that that was the start of the picnic. Can we move on to the next slide? So regarding the food, what food would you bring to the picnic? And we had decided that we would bring a mix of the healthy food and put in some fun food as well. Because remember, what happens at a picnic is that there will be discussions, there'll be random topics that you will talk about. And in that topic, your discussion can go in any direction. What we want the children to do is identify what are the things that they can work on. And once they've identified that, then they can use that as a life application. And so your discussion can go in any direction. It can go in the direction of, limiting your junk food, or having a more varied diet, or lessening the wastage, or eating mindfully. And this particular class, this picnic was for us to teach mindful eating. So if you'll go on to the next slide. What we did was, before we started, we had the prayer, and then everybody took the food in their plates, and we had a class on mindful eating. And it was a short, fun session that we had, where each of them took the food, looked at it, admired the size and shape of the food, put it into their mouth, and then smelled it and tasted it, and used all their 5 senses to enjoy the food. So this was a very practical way of getting that point across, that when you eat mindfully, the food will taste much better. And then they had to take this home, and this was their life application. If we go on to the next slide. Baba always says that the Sealing on Desires is a program for everybody. And so the savings that you have from this program has to be applied to Manav Seva, to helping everybody. So part of this picnic was also initiating a Seva attitude, the attitude of wanting to serve everybody. Every child had brought one thing, one item to be put together into a bag for the homeless. And you can see how much fun they had doing this. You can see the items that were collected and they were all put together. All the families had come together for this. And so we had the siblings and everybody had a lot of fun putting this together. And that was the connection that we wanted to establish for the children and for the class, and the connection that Seva and Sealing on Desires are both linked. It is something that that we want to emphasize. Next slide, please.
I think even the discussion on what to bring to put in the bag and how you go about it, what they may need, that itself was a good discussion where they go through the needs for a person, what they will use, what they will not use, and then what I need to bring, they discuss with their family. So these all are the practical applications. Go ahead, Disa.
Our next topic was money, and this came around the time of Thanksgiving and Christmas. Around that time in our community, we had also a lot of Afghan families that had been relocated to Houston. So the children came up with the idea of doing something for them. The discussion that we'd had in our class was wants versus needs. And the children had already identified what is necessary for them to live and what would be their wants. And what would it be for a child that was coming from Afghanistan into a totally different situation, and how they could help with their wants and needs. So what they did as a family was to sit down and discuss what could go into a bag. And they had, this is just one example, but there were many different bags, and each family had a different bag with different things that they thought that went into it. Some had decided to put in a book, the others had decided to put some fun things. And this young man, he's actually not attending classes, but he is attending the sevas that we have been doing. He actually wrote a letter, a welcome letter for the children from Afghanistan. And so it was really wonderful to see how much they could apply the lesson that they had learned from here into thinking about how this can be applied in a very practical way. Can we move on to the next slide? Another thing that had been done by the center was there is a facility where the homeless people can come for a shower. And after the shower, they are served a warm meal. So the children had made these hygiene bags for the homeless people so that they could take a shower. And you can see how beautifully they put everything together. So this is again another thing that they discussed with their family, decided what is it that we can put into these little bags to give to these wonderful people. Can we move on to the next slide? So as we discussed time, the discussion took place in the class, and then a lot of the practical applications had to happen at home. So while we were discussing Sealing on Desires on time, we had discussed how to do schedules, how to adequately manage your time, how would you prioritize things. And around this time, the discussion also happened with one of our parents that we don't want to introduce too many things that are traumatic for the children. So it might be good to just hook into one seva and just continue with that. So they decided to adopt the KT breakfast seva or the breakfast seva as one of our things where we would contribute towards. So around Valentine's Day, the children had decided, our class decided to bake cookies. Now, the discussion that happened was, how do you manage the time around this? Because the breakfast seva happens on a Saturday morning. which means that your cookies have to be made and delivered on a Friday evening. With all your activities, how would you manage to do this? Because all of them had baked these cookies in their home, and to coordinate all these cookies reaching to one place and then to be delivered had to happen. So they had to think through, okay, how would I do this so that we would not cause too much problem to anybody? And they decided how to do it. And as we got closer to the Seva date, we realized this was the time that there would be a freeze in Houston. So the schools were off, and then they had to think everything, because you don't want to go and deliver this when there is not good driving conditions. So taking into consideration their parents' schedule and the communication, those were all the things that they had to decide and figure out. And so the cookies were baked on the Thursday evening so that they could be delivered safely on Friday. And you can go to the next slide.
And I think time scheduling for this was really, Swami made it happen that we go through the lesson completely and talk about this time management well, because original plan was to bake on Friday, but because of all these nuances, what we had, and Houston is not that used to this freezing and snowy or these kind of driving climate. So this discussion really made it a very practical way of the time management. Yeah, please continue.
Yes. And so most of our discussions, these discussions about the Seva happen through a WhatsApp group. And when we initially discussed, we discussed in class. So some amount of the time in our class is put towards what our practical aspect is going to be. And then the other discussions can happen through either texts or WhatsApps with the children. So this was really fun for them. And they baked all the cookies. And you can see that they wrote notes with each of them because it was a Valentine's Day thing. And we had not actually asked them to do all this, but you can see how much effort they put into wrapping the cookies and putting them together. You can go to the next slide. So Swami says that God resides wherever these 6 excellences are evident. And I really like this because this is kind of what we are trying to inculcate in everybody, right? We are trying to do this in ourselves, but we really want this to be there for the children as well. That there has to be enthusiasm and determination and courage, good sense, strength, and a spirit of adventure. This is kind of what you want your children to have within them, because these are the positive qualities that Baba wants us to inculcate. Through these sevas, this is kind of what we were trying to do, and link the lesson plans to the practical aspects of how you would manage time or money or food. If you'll go to the next slide, you can see how beautifully they managed to wrap everything and put everything together. They have this, and then the next slide, please. You can see how nicely they put everything together. And the main emphasis in this was actually how do you manage your time so that you would have enough time to do your seva, and you take into consideration other people's schedules as well. How do you communicate with your family when you have multiple things going on? I would love to hear from all of you about how you have been applying the Sealing on Desires program for your children. Praful Bhai, did you want to add something to this?
Yeah, I just want to say this is the way we did it, and we know that this is a very near and dear topic to Swami. We would like to learn. We are not here to tell, we just explained what we did, but you all are very experienced, and we need to learn what are the other things we can do to make it more interesting. So please share your thoughts, your ideas, your suggestions to the chat box, and we'll go from here to that. So I think there's a last slide here, one more slide. Yeah.
Right. So Praful Bhai and I were discussing, and we felt like, making a lesson plan is like making a cookie. It has to have substance. And our substance is the Sealing on Desires program. We have to be very sure what we're trying to teach, what we're trying to give to the children. The substance has to be there. The sweetness is when they apply these life lessons into their lives on a daily basis, the changes that they see. So once they started to eat mindfully, how did it change their lives? How did it make them feel better? You know, once you have a better managed time, how does that help with you? And how do you feel regarding that? And then the enthusiasm. These are the chocolate chips that you add in. So in our lesson plan, the enthusiasm that we had, that was the chocolate chips in our cookies of the lesson plan.
That's how SSC comes about in our classroom.
This is our SSC,
So,
our
yeah,
substance.
so the
our
last slide
sweetness,
is
and
just the
enthusiasm.
references what we have for all the material we are using in our class. We just wanted to leave it here, and maybe this is the time to go to question answer session. So please guide us, inspire us through your questions.
Sure. Thank you, Sister Disha, and thank you, Brother Praful. That was really, really very inspiring. Thank you so much. We have a few questions that are coming in. Many had suggestions for planning a picnic, like bring your own plates, spoons, forks, and then RSVP for the picnic itself,
Yes.
bringing fresh food, and definitely get a head count. And then one person said they love the idea of how you wrap the hygiene products in a towel. And then I'll read out the question. The first question is, how was communication being coordinated for inclement weather time change?
So we have a parents group that has, for all the children that have their phone, they and have WhatsApp are a part of that group as well. And so that was basically the mode of communication. We kind of had an idea the week before. So this seva was actually planned when we started planning the seva around the time that we started the topic. And so that was about 2 weeks out, 2 to 3 weeks out, right, Praful Bhai?
Yeah.
And then after that, this weather change, we kind of knew the week before. So this became a part of our lesson plan where we were talking about time, and you said, well, did you know about the weather change? And the kids were like, no, we didn't know that. Like, okay, let's keep following this. And when we get closer to the time, we'll decide, what needs to happen. But here are the steps that need to happen for you to get the cookies, for the people that it has to go to by Saturday morning. So once you have these steps in place, it's like, okay, these are, the cookies have to be baked. You have to make sure that they're wrapped up. Then they have to go to the collection point. One of the parents was the collection point. And from there, they have to be delivered in a timely manner. So, not very late, so that they can be delivered to the people that we are serving by Saturday morning. Once they knew these steps, they were like, okay, then I think that, and this was a discussion in class itself. They're like, oh, I think that this is what we should do. And then another child said, well, maybe this is what we should do. And so maybe we should. And then once this happened, that the school was not, they were going to be off of school on Friday, then it was an easy decision for them to make. We'll bake on Thursday, we'll deliver on Friday afternoon, and that's it.
Yeah, so thank you. Thanks for bringing that, time management element into all of this. And it was almost like, you had this event plan, but then you almost had a curveball come your way, and then
yes.
it really tested their time management skills. So
actually, yeah, and it is interesting. We actually had curveballs even for our picnic, because on the day that we had the picnic, it had rained the day before, and there was a 40% chance of rain, then 50% chance of rain. So then we rescheduled the picnic, because we wanted it to be a fun experience for the children. So we rescheduled the picnic to a week later also. So you will have all these curveballs that come your way when you have this. And it worked out great though.
And it's a great teaching moment for the students as well.
For the students also. So even though this is,
learning. And this is a great learning for all of us. Ms. Swami is not only giving this to the student, to teachers and family, all three elements of the SSC is learning through the Swami's, all these nuances which we brings in.
Yes.
Thank you. So I have a next question. Can you please share some questions that children asked you during your discussion about the topic?
So some of the fun moments that I remember that we had from the picnic, one was, this whole discussion about, I love this food, the moments that come are very, very interesting. It's like, oh, I love bananas and I can eat 6 bananas, and then the thing is the question that you have there is okay, if you eat 6 bananas, would that be a good choice? So you can choose to bring it up later and connect it to the topic of what makes a food sattvic and rajasic and tamasic, and when you overdo something, you can enjoy your chips, but if you eat too much of something, what does that, how does that food become from a good food to a not very good food? What were some of the other questions, Praful Bhai, that the children had asked?
And I'll also mention that a lot of them, they know what sattvic food is, but they like something, like if they like chips or some of the things they like. But so we do not have to tell them that don't eat this, but slowly bring the awareness, because decision has to be taken by student. We are not the deciding factor.
Right.
So we wanted to bring the awareness to the student so that they can themselves process that and then decide what is right and what is the best way to proceed.
Right. And Baba never said that you can't enjoy the foods. And so that is why we wanted the chips and cookies to be there too. So the fun foods had, there were chips and there were cookies and there were some other things. And the thing that you want the children to do, and it's a very, because you want them to enjoy their food, you want them to enjoy their time. So it's not like they can never play video games, but it's just that should not be the only thing that's taking up your time. And so one of the things that you want to emphasize very slowly is self-control, and that is within your hands. And that's kind of the basis of sealing on desires. It's not for me to say what you should or should not do. You have to make that, because it's this is 7th graders, so they're very smart and they know what they have to do and what they have to work on. And it's just basically during our discussion, these topics come up, and life applications, they'll be like, yeah, I'm working on this. And there are some things that they still, I have some kids that'll be like, yeah, and I'm still working on the food one, so we've reached time, but yeah, I'm still, I'm working on doing this, which is great, because that's kind of what you want them to do. You want them to keep it in their lives and keep it so that it becomes a part of them slowly and gradually.
So thanks for explaining that. And I have another few questions that have come in. Can you elaborate on needs versus wants, specifically how to balance the sheer joy of guilt pleasures and wanting to curb those desires?
I think we kind of partly answered some of that. It was very interesting to see that this generation actually did not have that many wants. A lot of them had already had these discussions with their parents, and did not have too many, things that, oh, I want this and I want that. And they all are so excited about helping other people, but that it is important to identify. And a lot of these, the discussions that we have, we can put in our personal examples as well. And I think that makes a difference when we talk about, okay, what is my need and my want, and what we went through. And then there is this whole discussion in class that happens. Oh yeah, and I wanted this game and I was doing this. So that want versus need, I don't think that they were very receptive. The children are incredibly receptive, more so than adults, I sometimes feel. And the interesting part is they already have been having these discussions in their homes, and I was amazed to find the kind of stuff that they with their families have already been doing. So I don't think that was a very hard discussion to have.
But I would like to add this here in this. When we were talking about the people who moved from Afghanistan, they have left their home and they have come to Houston. So that time when we're discussing what all should be there in the bag, and they were all, so it's very easy to bring an example of someone that he moved from that country to here. So what do you think his needs may be? And what do you think his wants? So when you bring a practical example like that, or individual experience sharing from the students, because in our class, I'll tell you, our students are very vocal and they speak their mind so openly that sometimes we wonder that what did we do that they are so vocal, and they are, miss, we, moment we ask a question and you will have 2-3 hands raised immediately that they are ready to answer. So it's not one of the quiet class. So discussion goes really well and very varied and detailed.
Right. And it was interesting, during when we were planning the picnic, it came up that there were a few children who were allergic to certain foods. So that was another thing that you had to put into consideration, having consideration for other people. When you're making sandwiches, you can make sandwiches that are free from, the things that the children were allergic to, and had a separate thing. And that was very, very much appreciated by the parents. And it is something that then came up later as a Seva idea as well, because then this awareness was brought around that these allergy-free foods are very expensive, and that if you donate these allergy-free foods to the regular food bank, it just goes to the regular section. But if you give it through a separate, so I did not know this, that it has to go to a separate section where it will go to the families who need gluten-free or peanut-free or nut-free food. And so it was a good education moment, that came from the children. And there was one of our children, he actually did a whole presentation on, this is another aspect that you should think about when you're donating food. And then we did a little, fundraiser. We said, okay, go to the stores and see how difficult it is to find these foods, and then did a collection and dropped it off. So that was, there are a lot of things that come out of these discussions when we are talking about food, and when we are talking about money and time.
So there are a couple of questions on food. One is, it's kind of related, but one is, can you distribute homemade? Is it okay to distribute homemade cookies, or are there any restrictions on store-bought only? And along the same lines, even for the picnic, are all the food items cooked at home, or can they be packaged items as well? So one is for your food, the cookies, and one is for the picnic, store-bought versus home-bought.
Yeah. I think that, when we wanted to do a Seva, we had done homemade cookies, because we wanted them to go through that experience of actually putting in the effort. Because without that effort, it's not really a Seva. You can go and buy something and they don't get anything out of it. But they had to actually, and they had this choice. So we said, okay, make cookies. These are your, broad guidelines. And you do it with your family, because again, at that time, they still were not willing to meet in person and do it as a group. But so store-bought can be an option, but they're already buying things for the breakfast Seva. So we thought this handmade, homemade cookies would be a good idea for them. And then the same thing for the food items. We left it, so each parent had volunteered to bring one thing. And depending upon how much time they had, there was a parent that had really, made some wonderful, chana and things like that. And then there was some that had bought it from the store. So no guidelines regarding that, because it's supposed to be a picnic. It's supposed to be fun. And depending upon the time that the parents and the family have, because sometimes that day may have been especially busy. So there was no guideline regarding that, but we did want a mix of a lot of healthy food, because we wanted to give that experience of, how would you choose from all of this? What all can you, and you had certain children having certain things more and then others. And then there was that whole discussion about what they like, which we carried over to the class when we had the following week.
Yeah.
And I'll add one more thing here, that for this Seva, we serve them the lunch also, and we take homemade sandwiches, and these are cleared to serve there. That's why homemade cookies, we have done it many times and we have clearance to do that. That's why we can do that anytime. Thank you.
So I think we'll take a couple more questions. I'll combine those. One is on the discussion itself. Did you do this as part of your Bal Vikas class? And if you had the discussion with the parents, how, can you share a little bit about that initial meeting that you had with the parents?
Right. So the initial, if you're talking about the before we started our SSC session, Praful Bhai can take that question because he set up the individual meeting with everybody.
Yeah, what we did, because this is the topic to be taken seriously, this is the stealing on disaster topic, Swami's favorite topic. So we wanted student and family to be aware. And the live application, all those things will be practiced by student and family, all of them. So individually, each family by family, we had a Zoom call. We couldn't go. Earlier, we used to visit each family to introduce ourselves. But this year, what we did, we had individual Zoom call with every family. And those Zoom calls were 20 minutes to 30 minutes, where we introduced ourselves, we introduced the topic. We talked about how we'll practice and how we'll do this topic. And surprisingly, you'll find that all the families what we have in our class right now, very, very supportive, very supportive. And they also love that their children are participating in these activities. In fact, some of the families, they are trying to find from outside that what we can do more. So this is a wonderful opportunity we had with the parents also.
Yeah, there are a couple more questions. Do we have time for just a couple more?
Right.
Okay.
And I'll just add one thing, majority of our class is spent in discussing the topic that we are supposed to have. So if we're discussing time, we had a whole, story about, well, if you had a bank with $84,600 that, disappeared by the end of the day, what would you do with it? And then, linking it to you have 84,600 seconds in a day that you need to spend, and you need to spend them. So, you have your whole lesson plan that you do. But in every class, we have a little bit of a discussion about what are the practical aspects. So your life application, your seva. And the idea is usually floated by the children themselves. And then we go back on the WhatsApp group and we tell the parents, okay, this is what was discussed and this is what happened. So that's the parental communication happens through the WhatsApp group. The discussion of how the activity is to take place usually happens in class. So if that was what the question meant.
Thank you. And one question on the pandemic itself. How did you address social distancing for the picnic?
So only for the photo, the children had their masks off. And while they were eating, so they had their, majority of the times they had their masks on. I think because it was an outdoor event, the worry was a little bit lesser. But most of the event, it was very hard to keep, there were many children because there were 13 of the children themselves and then their siblings and then the parents. It was very hard to keep them apart. But we had actually discussed all of this beforehand and judged the comfort level of the parents, and they were okay with that. So, and thankfully they all stayed healthy after the event.
And they did exactly the same thing what they were doing in the school. So they were not doing something unusual, and parents and students were okay because we didn't want it to have this unique situation. We wanted to have something what they are used to. So it went well.
So here's a follow-up question. Did the families maintain and continue this practice of mindful eating after the picnic and other activities? Do you follow up on it?
Yes, we do follow up upon it. Some of the children say they're still working on it, and others have been making that life change. So, and I think that once the concept is introduced, there will be times that there will be slip-ups, but majority of them have been doing better. That's the feedback we get from the parents.
And I'll add one more thing here, that even though we have moved on from all the topics to energy right now, but there are some students, they all have their own life application, and they are not every time there's a common life application. So some of them are still working on food, some of them are on money and time. And our life applications, like we are doing right now, energy, and how you draw energy when you do kind of a meditation or when you do prayer, instead of going through the heat energy and light energy and power and saving and electricity and thing, we are taking it to little different, because in previous years we have done those turn off light and this. This year we are trying to do more on drawing energy from the prayers. So how you pray, how you feel about it, share in your life application. Same way, this last class we did on Swami's 12 seconds meditation, and then how you do from 12 seconds 12 times and this. And so this is a continuous process, and some of them are on one life application, some of them are on the meditation or prayer. So it's a variety, and that's why when we discuss in the class different aspects of life application, you bring the entire, all the crux of Stealing on Desires.
So before I turn it over, there are a couple of comments that came in. That one is about it's better to encourage fresh cooked meal to avoid packaged products because we want to go green, especially when you're talking on sealing on desires and saving energy. So that's one comment that came in. And then the other comment that came in was having approved list, snack list with ingredients, so that you take into account allergy information for the children as well. So have that up front, so then it's easy for them to bring snacks. So with that, thank you so much, and I will turn it over to Sister Aparna.
Thank you.
Thank you, Disha and Prafulji. I took a lot of notes, even though the presentation was like, I think 9 or 10 slides. I think it doesn't do justice to how much time and effort you have put in, starting with connecting with the parents and then, having discussions with children. And I feel like if children are very honest and open with you in group 3, it also means group 1 and group 2 teachers did an amazing job.
They did.
So it's not something that happens overnight, and you have kept the momentum going. So that's fantastic that the children feel comfortable. I loved what Prafulbhai said about the decision has to come from the child, and we are only creating an nurturing environment by which we can increase their awareness and then help them to come to that change in behavior on their own. Then it is more permanent. If they do it just for us, then it's there on that day and then it might disappear. But if it's something that's internalized, then it's more long lasting. And I love also the idea about drawing energy from prayers. I think that was something new perspective for us to consider when we think about sealing on desires, about energy. And even the time management, how you think of time, the seconds that you get in a bank, and how would you feel if you lose $84,000? How would you feel? That was also another, good example. So I want to thank you both again, and want to thank all the teachers who joined in. Your presence make a difference. It feels good to share a Wednesday evening with all of you. Those who entered their questions on the chat, thank you, putting your suggestions in. That was fantastic. If you have more suggestions or ideas on a future topic, please feel free to write to us at saisspiritualeducation@satyasai.us. Stay inspired, stay curious, and we'll meet again in March, the last Wednesday, with a new topic and new set of speakers and new perspectives to take with us to SSE. And we'll now close with a short prayer. So if you stay on, please.
Asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityorma amrutam gamaya.